Align and Awaken with Mother Earth Rising podcast. Let's rise and heal together with me, Pippa, your Mother Earth healer. Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today I've got a very special friend with me and I can't wait to introduce her because she is the ultimate goddess in the spiritual world, in my world, because she's helped me so much on my journey already. I'm going to introduce Sarah McBride. Sarah is a spiritual mentor, business strategist and trauma specialist. She's the CEO of the Genius Alchemist Academy and the founder of Kapucia. So when I say them things, I'm like, oh my God, she is the ultimate goddess in the spiritual world. She really is. And I can't wait to chat with her today. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Pip. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the introduction.
You're so welcome. I've been dying to chat to you on the podcast for so long because I just know the work you do is so linked into what I do. And I learn so much from you and you inspire me all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So before we get into the meat of what we want to talk about today, just tell the listeners a bit about you, what you do, and what you came to Earth to be in this lifetime.
Okay, so a little bit about what I do. So I know you've already kind of done some introductions, but it's kind of, it's what I would say is I align people with their purpose. So when I say, trauma specialist, when I say spiritual mentor or business strategist, it all kind of aligns to the same thing, which is aligning people to their purpose. Because within someone's purpose, they have blockages like trauma that get in the way. They have kind of visibility issues which stop them going out into business, or they don't have the tools to put themselves out there in business, as a conscious entrepreneur, healer, therapist, whatever it is that they want to do, and spiritual mentor, because the spiritual world has been something that I've been in for a very, very long time. My journey began very young, and it's something that I've been persistently kind of moving through, through my own journey of self-discovery, and then how I can present that to other people. So in a nutshell, that is what I do. I've got 10 years background as a corporate business consultant, which I don't do anymore because I now bring that world and those tools to the spiritual and conscious entrepreneurs. And I've also got over 10 years experience coaching. And doing therapies, and that covers from shamanism to shamanic healing, right the way through to neuroscience, to multidimensional work, to theta work. So it's kind of a mixture. My journey's been really colourful, should we say.
Yeah, I love when you explain what you do, because you've literally got a full toolbox of so many things you can help people with, and that's why you are so sought after in your industry as well, because you've just done so much of the work and you still are doing the work. And I think people love you, Sarah, because you are so vulnerable, you are so authentic, you do say it how it is, and you do bring that realist into you basically, and when people come to you, they need help with all sorts of things, and you don't fluff it. You just say, right, this is what we need to do, and you guide them through so beautifully, and that's sometimes what they need. They need that direction and structure to align with their higher self and soul. So, what are some of the things that you would say, would help people to get into alignment with their soul or higher self?
So for me, my journey is also to align with my soul's journey and my higher self. And that's why I'm authentic in my work, in terms of, if there's directness, then I'm going to be direct. If there's kind of, if there's trauma that comes up, past trauma, if there's constraints within myself, then it's something I will work on to heal within myself. And, that's why for me, that is the journey of authenticity, and that authenticity is aligning with your higher self. So if somebody come to me and said, they want to align to their higher self, And I get people who are, brand new to the path in terms of they actually don't know what they want to do. They just know that they've got this higher call and there's something that they want to move out to, that they want to leave the job, they want to leave the business, but they actually don't know what it is that they want to do. I have people there. I have people who are literally on the periphery. They know they want to do it, but they need that, hands holding through the process. And then I have many coaches and healers, therapists and entrepreneurs that I coach as well. And everyone's at different stages in their journey. So it all depends where they are. But if I was kind of to say, to align to your higher self, to align to your purpose, you just need to align to your higher self. And, to align to your higher self is about stripping those ego limitations, like the programming that we pick up. We have hundreds of thousands of programs that we're operating on a daily basis, and sometimes we think it's our intuition guiding us towards something, but it's actually the subconscious directing us. And we have to kind of differentiate what's the subconscious, what's the kind of your blueprint in terms of your limitation and the ego constraints, and actually what's the true ultimate body wisdom that's coming through, because if we think about it, the ego is kind of something that's formed to keep us safe, over many years. And because it's formed to keep us safe, it's always looking to mitigate risk. It's always filtering through hundreds and thousands of programs that we've got that usually we've picked up from somebody else, from one of our caregivers or peers, whatever that is. So it's about ultimately dissolving and stripping back those limitations and, looking at your trauma, dissolving all of that trauma, working through that trauma, and kind of creating a new blueprint of who you are. And if we think, for example, our brain, over the last 2 million years, our brain's been wired and developed purely for survival. So we can say that, sometimes when we're in our heads, it's coming from a place of ego because we don't know how to tap into that body wisdom. Whereas the body wisdom, for me, is our soul. That's, in alignment with the universe, which has been in operation for, almost 13 billion years. So it's about moving out of the head, moving into the body, into the heart, into the feelings. And that's my starting point where I would, kind of guide someone, looking at what their blockages are, their beliefs are, their constraints. You always know it's ego. If someone puts a constraint in place, or a fear, it's coming from safety. That the soul is limitless. It's powerful beyond measure. We can do boundless things, endless. So, by the way somebody's speaking, by the way they're communicating, by the beliefs that they hold, whether they're living a life which is kind of more soul-led or ego-led. And this is not to attack the ego, because the ego is something that was built in order to keep us safe, in order for us to survive. So it's just about stripping that back to moving into a kind of a different reality for ourselves.
It fascinates me when I hear someone else talk about it, because, I love learning about the ego and I love researching what it was there for. Thinking about when we're back, as cave women and cavemen and the saber-tooth example, I love history. So when I go back and I think, wow, it had such an important purpose, didn't it? And then as we've come into the 21st century, again, it's attached to so many superficial things. A lot of the time it's, attached to how much I earn, what I wear, the house I live in, the car I drive, etc., etc. But, it's fascinating how we don't just come to earth with this sole purpose and we just live life, we connect to our higher self. It's like a journey, isn't it? Like the ego comes in again to protect us, but from our caregivers and parents and teachers and siblings, these fears come in, these beliefs come in, these habits come in, and it is part of the journey, isn't it? I think we signed up for this, didn't we? Because some people have come to the earth and they're just, enlightened from the day they're born. We've had many of them. Jesus is one of them, and but for us, it is about the human experience, isn't it? We came here to experience what the ego is. We came here to experience what spirit is. Even though we're having a human experience,
and this is
it
and this is why we shouldn't, people view the ego as negative. I don't view the ego
yeah.
negative. For me, it's about befriending the ego. It's about understanding the ego. It's about understanding what your triggers are, within the ego, because that actually points you to the woundings that you have to work on, because those woundings are the limitations. Any wound that you've got is going to limit you on some level, because, the brain will literally search back through your past and it will predict the future based on what's happened in the past. So because of that, then if you've had some trauma or experience of trauma in the past or negative experiences, then that's going to put you in your ego in a place of fear of what's going to happen in the future. So that's how the brain, fully functions and works. And it does that as a mechanism which has developed over 2 million years to ultimately just keep us safe. So we have to, because sometimes there is times in our life when we need to feel safe and we need to weigh up, we need to assess, we need to mitigate risk. But then it's about using discernment, because some people are in that hypervigilant trauma response state all of the time. When what that does is that actually negates our true essence, that actually negates the kind of one of the experiences that we're here for, which was the remembrance of actually who we are and our divine essence. So, we are in the university of life. That's how it is. And as we move through that, it's about understanding that, okay, we are on this school journey and it's a series of evolution. So what do? We remove those restraints, we look at them. We can go right the way down through our lineage, because, epigenetics shows now that things are getting carried through our DNA, through, physical. And we know a lot of the time physical is caused by an emotional trauma. So that being said, we can look and say, okay, we know we're getting programmed from the last trimester of birth. So we're in that programmable state right through, it could be many generations back. We're picking up on those traumas, their beliefs, their programs, and it's getting passed down. And then we're still being programmed in the last trimester of birth right the way through. And then, up until the age of 7, we're in the theta state, and the theta's a hypnotic state, as you know. So that's when our blueprint's forming. And then that blueprint we're operating on, unless we do some sort of form of inner work to say, okay, I'm going to look and address my constraints. I'm going to address my wounds. I'm going to look at what my programs are in order for me to fully align with the divine essence and why I'm here. Because my belief, and it is my belief, is that we all have a higher soul purpose. It doesn't mean that purpose has to be, saving the world and helping millions of people. It's different for everybody, because every part is equal. Everybody is kind of as important and as special as each other. Every soul is magnificent, but it's about, okay, so if that's what we're here for, you fully need to align and understand what your soul purpose is, because we have an entire ecosystem in life. And we know, we can look at the insects, we can look at, within the ecosystem, all the animals, we can look at nature, we can look at the seasons, and we know everything fits perfectly. And, Mother Nature's so divine in the way that she can, repopulate and heal and, overcome adversity, from humans and mankind, which creates scarcity. So we know that. So if we aligned ourselves with everyone's soul purpose to say, okay, this is what we're all here, this is our divine essence, then, the world would become a really special place.
I love it. I just find it fascinating how, we're on this earth together and we're all going through different experiences, but again, we're all connected in so many ways. It's just, it fascinates me talking about it. But when you were talking about, how we're wired in our DNA and, the fight, flight or freeze, it's like, you think about, someone's fear. So for example, say it was going up on a stage in front of 1,000 people, that can induce fear in people, can't it? That kind of something like that. The brain again can look back and think, oh my God, well, that stage is a saber tooth. Do you know what I mean? It's like, again, it's the condition, isn't it? And then it's allowing them conditions to reprogram them conditions, isn't it? Because it's doable. That's, again, the science behind it is fascinating, and that's why, like, obviously I've just started studying NLP, because it is about the brain can change. You think about how the brain's so powerful, and the brain is connected to the body, and the body's connected to your organs, and it's just, everything's just combined into one. But then the essence of that is the soul, isn't it? Like, you came, I mean, if we go really spiritual with it, you chose this vessel, you chose this body, you chose this personality. So what, how are you going to live your life? You're going to have to go through them traumas and then fears, and doing the work. That's kind of what I want to ask next. Is doing the work is it's the hardest bit in some ways, but it's the most transformational for me. Like, understanding the ego and managing the ego is something that we all need to do, and it's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually it's when people get to the pain point, which then pushes them into doing the work, and we only have to look at kind of those things that we come and we incarnate and we choose, to kind of to hold within this incarnation, whatever that wound is. For example, I'll use rejection wounds. Then, if you spend a good proportion of your life, or, a huge part of your existence in overcoming this wound and healing this wound, then imagine the magic that you can then provide. Because, as they say, the gold is where it was, lives in the shadows. In the shadows is where our alchemy, where our gold lies. So when we have a wound like that, for example, then that can become our biggest strength, because, we work on it so much, to overcome it so much, then all of a sudden it's not a wound anymore. And then what can we do? We can do more than, what the person next to us who wasn't born with a rejection wound and never had to work with it on. So we can then put ourselves out there to a bigger degree and accept criticism, without allowing the fragile ego to stop us and being scared of rejection, and rejection's huge that people carry, because, again, going back to cavemen times, and we are a herd species, so because of that, we have this pack mentality. We need to be accepted and validated, especially by our caregivers. And if we're not, then, a response would have been, many years ago, well, if I'm not accepted by my parents and I'm in the wild, I'm going to be left to die. That is the natural response. It's not like now where, if a baby's left, someone else will pick it up and adopt it. It doesn't work like that. Years ago, you get left, you're dead. So that's instinctively, we have this desire to be validated and accepted. So rejection can be a huge wound. And it is all about, the inner work for me is about understanding what those wounds are, understanding your wounds by allowing yourself to feel the triggers, and where do the triggers lead me to, and then where that leads me to, how does that make me feel? Okay, so there's a wound, rather than immediately projecting it onto the other person that they have made me feel a certain way. If we look at life as it's purely a journey we're on with a relationship to self, no more, no less. So our relationship to self and how healthy that is going to determine how healthy our relationship to others are. So the inner work is why it's so important, because that's going to transform our wounds. It's going to transform our relationships around us. When we start to understand our patterns of behaviours, when we understand our wounds, and it can be one decision made in childhood based on something that we saw or something that happened to us, creates a program. We operate on that program our entire life. We then develop a certain set of traits, characteristics, patterns of behaviours that align to that decision we made and that program. And then, you get to age 30, age 40, and you don't see yourself as being any different, because that's how it's always been for you. When if you just take it back to the point of creation of when that began, and start to unravel the patterns of behaviours and start to change them and make conscious decisions and move forward with conscious awareness, and have tools to do so as well, because it's not as easy as, reading a book and then all of a sudden you're healed, There's kinds of strategies and tools that can help you do that and change those patterns and behaviours, create a new blueprint for yourself. Then that is ultimately the inner work. And then the inner work is what's going to change our entire life and change our reality. It's going to create a new inner relational blueprint of how we relate to other people, how we emote to people, you know, how all of these different things and how we kind of respond to people. So when we look at it as it's a relationship to self, when someone triggers us, it's about not projecting onto them or going into attack, but looking at ourselves and how we're going to respond. We can control our response. We can control, you know, how we react to that person. And that's ultimately what inner work is.
Yeah, it reminds me of, like, you know, the stuff that I learned was, you know, if someone's mean to you, you know, yeah, that says more about them. It's how you feel about that. So if someone says something, you know, triggers you and says something really mean to you, that's, you know, that's for you. How it makes you feel it is for you to work on. Is your responsibility to take on board and say, oh well, I didn't like that, and why I didn't like that. And, you know, thought therapy journaling is changed my life. When I started doing that 2 years ago, I'd, like, you know, I'd rank how much it triggered me. And I know you know a bit about my triggers at the moment, so, but like now they're getting little and like more little, and I think, oh, they're not as significant, but they're actually more powerful. Even the little tiny ones that I think, oh, I'll just leave them and avoid them. You know, I remember you said don't avoid them, because they're actually the most transformational ones, because I'm thinking, oh my God, like, that's so small, but it's had the biggest impact. And while you were talking then, a question came to me, and it's something that I've been asking myself over the last couple of weeks. And the question was, every human on this planet, no matter what they've done, you know, if, as we say, right and wrong is different to everybody. It's a duality that's been created in humanity, you know, no matter who it is. Do you believe that every human on earth deep down desires just to be loved?
Yeah, so what I believe is that when you're born, you've got one sole aim, and that is to be loved. That's it. That's what I believe. That is what everybody's doing. So behind every action is to be loved. And even some, you know, people that kind of, you go into more violence and you know, more angry, you know, that's usually covering up something deeper, a deeper trigger, angry, because they need more love. They don't feel love. They feel rejected. They feel wounded. And I think, you know, that a lack of love in somebody's life, you know, a lack of love can actually change your blood chemistry. That's how powerful a lack of love is. And there's over 50 studies that prove that, you know. So if you imagine you've got a lack of love, the physiological effect it's having on your body, the effect it's having on your brain, and the effect emotionally, how it makes you feel about yourself and the decisions you make about yourself based on you not being loved, then more often than not, people then can develop into, you know, quite toxic behaviours and toxic habits. And, you know, other people will judge, you know, certain people's behaviours when actually, and I'm not saying, you know, let's all be love and light and love everyone and that's what's going to heal the world, because it's more complex than that, you know. There's people that have developed certain behaviours and patterns over really long periods of time, and you know, more for rehabilitation, but sometimes it can be that quite dangerous in terms of what they've formed. But then if it would have been stopped and nipped in the bud from a very early age, you probably would have seen different behaviours and characteristics, as my point. Because even when people are trying to be loved, trying to, you know, making decisions in the moment, usually behind it is, how do I get love?
Yeah.
Yeah, any decision.
Right. I connect to, you know, how do I become love? It's something that obviously I know the St. Francis prayer really sticks with me. It's one of my favourite ones. And, you know, it's not asking for love, it's letting me become love. And that's, you know, a lot of the time, but again, you know, some of it is, you know, how we're brought up. Everyone's different how we're brought up, you know, as you know. And but again, I always, my belief is that we chose our parents, we chose our siblings, we chose everybody who comes into our life for a reason. And it's for this, it's to have the trauma, it's to have certain beliefs, it's to have, you know, different things to work through, because the journey of that is it is challenging. We're not going to sit here and lie and say, oh yeah, it's a breeze. And like you said, you're not just going to read a book and be like, I'm healed. It literally takes, and I've done it. I'll hold my hands up and think, I've done say 6 to 12 months of it, and I think, oh, I'm getting really there. But then the universe goes, no, you've still got this little bit to do. Or, I'll be having like a good week, and then one little trigger will happen. I'll go, damn it, I was doing really good. But when I do, like I said, you befriend the ego. And then when I get triggered now, I think, oh, great. So I've still got something to work on. And how can I work on it? So having the tools, doing the work, it's got to be part of your daily routine for me. It's like brushing your teeth. It's got to be part of connecting to your soul, connecting to your higher self, because that's what your soul desires, isn't it? To be healed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dichotomy at play, because sometimes you can go too much into the heal, and it's this, journey of just constantly, I'm looking for things to heal, and by doing that, you're rejecting yourself in its current state. So we have to be careful, because, and I say this, and I'm all about inner work and growth, and that's how I guide my clients. But it's also about accepting yourself in the moment as well, because otherwise we can, by constantly, even the word healed, suggests that there's something broken, there's something diseased, something that's not working right. So we just have to be careful with how we do approach it. And, for me, I just position it, although, it is a lot of trauma to deal with it, I position it as, there's this growth journey, and I'm looking for things and identifying triggers. But it also depends, again, how much work you've done in yourself to get to that space. So someone who's done more work will perceive it differently, the healing journey. So, there's a lot of different things at play, and anything for me, anything that's not of the ultimate truth of the soul of who you are creates suffering. So all of these stories that we tell ourselves, because they are stories, we make a decision in childhood. And it's so interesting, because we make a decision when we're age 6, something about ourselves based on a thing that happened to us. And then we get to 36 and we're still carrying the story of we are this thing, like we're not worthy, or, we're not lovable, because when we were a small child, something happened to us. And when we step into empathy, we realise that actually the child didn't have the healthy sense of self, didn't have that healthy ego developed. So it made a decision based on not the full information, and it didn't have that empathy and awareness to say, okay, well, this person treated me like this because maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe because they were treated like that. So because the child self can't take itself out of the situation and look at it from that perspective, it automatically makes an assumption. But then the adult has the responsibility to take a step back and say, that was an assumption that child made. Me as a child made an assumption. That assumption's not true. I'm carrying this story on now. And then that's where personal responsibility comes in, because you're carrying a story on, and you are creating a self-perpetual state of suffering because it's not the truth. So anything that is not truth creates suffering. So this is what we have to do when we're looking at, okay, how do I align with a higher perspective?
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say was about, attaching, like when you said about, it's not just about the healing, because we can get really attached to it. And, again, what attachment is, you get to attach and you actually, it isn't good for you, because we need to have the balance. And I think it's, before we finish there, I want to just ask, how do people differentiate between a higher self thought and an ego thought for you? Because again, if they're doing some healing work and they feel good, say 1 week, they feel really good, they've done quite a bit of healing work, after over a couple of weeks, they should be able to take a few days off and rest and recoup and just reflect. So, I have a lot of clients say to me, sometimes I don't know if it's my inner critic or if it's my higher self, how to know the difference. So it'd be interesting to see, how you see that.
So, put it this way, there's no, you can't say, okay, well, this is a characteristic of the higher self and this is the characteristic of the ego, what we have to do is we have to know ourselves. We have to understand our patterns and our traits because, for example, when we're trying to tune into discernment, I mean, for me, I'm an intuitive, so I get visions, I get feelings. Everybody's different. So for me, I have an experience through my whole body when I know that something is from my higher self. I can feel the buzzing sensation energetically in my head when it's coming from the ego. But not everybody has that because not everybody's developed their sensitivity to energy in that way. So, you have to understand a very easy, simple way of doing it is understanding what your wounds are. Because then when you understand your wounds, your programs and your patterns, then when you're making a decision, you can see whether it aligns with that wounds and whether it aligns with that pattern. Because if them patterns and them wounds are going to point us to the stories we tell about ourselves. And if we're in ego, and it's discernment of is it ego? Well, if it aligns with the pattern that you've had the entire life, then it's pretty much going to be ego. If it's coming from a different place, one of openness and possibility, then it's more than likely going to be your soul.
Yeah. And again, it's the body tells you, doesn't it? Like you get those like really awful gut feelings with them, when it's your higher self, you're like, oh, this is really good. And you've got, it takes practice because again, people are conditioned in different ways. Like people see the negatives in every situation or they think the worst, and you've got to train your mind to look at the positives and the opportunities and the possibilities because like you said, we're limitless, there's so much we can do and there's so much that we can experience and the opportunities we've got are just endless. So it is really interesting. Like I could talk about this topic for so long, but I do want to ask you as well about the work you do and how people can find you. I know that I'm signed up to the academy, which is amazing. That is really going deep and it's helped. Like even for example, the work I did yesterday, the aspect work about values and boundaries. So just to give an example, I've always stuck to values and I've always I read my values a lot but you made me go to them deeper, and it's just, I love how you combine them with boundaries because again, your values are who you are. It's your core, isn't it? It's like one of mine is kindness. So why would I accept anything less than kindness? So that was a really, really interesting exercise for me because I experienced that at the weekend and I just thought to myself, God, it just relates so much. So if you tell everybody how they can work with you and I know the offerings that you've got some different ones, haven't you?
Yeah. So it's just with the academy, it's all those exercises were born out of my experiences. So that's why they're different. That's why they're not exercises that are out there in the way that they're linked and things like that because they're purely born out of my own experiences. And I think we can spend too much time doing qualifications, and although I have got a lot of qualifications, a lot of the work I teach is based on, it's experiential and my experience and experience with clients. So yeah, I mean, I do have different offerings. I have an academy which people can join, which is all pre-recorded courses, and it's a combination of inner work and going into, more of the business tools, and if you want to put yourself out there and visibility and things like that, but then I have kinds of courses that I teach and I have practitioners now training to teach them, and they are all centered around inner work, so the type of work that we're discussing right now. And I do kinds of like packages, one-to-one packages as well with clients, and I have a global client base now, with who I work with and where I work, because I'm trying to get this kind of work out there further, but it goes to a deeper level from multi perspectives as well, not just, one healer modality. There's a blend of lots of different ones. And yeah, I mean, people can just contact me through my website, which is www.thesarahmcbride.com. Has to be there before the Sarah McBride because there's another Sarah McBride in America who's a senator. So that's thesarahmcbride.com.
You're the senator of the spiritual world in my eyes. But yeah, I'll put your links in the show notes, Sarah, so everyone can find you. But definitely check out the Academy, guys, because it's got everything in there that you need just to start the work off, do that inner work, and you can do it at your own pace. And you know, all this work's come from Sarah, and you know, she's channeled it and she's intuitively done it. So it's from the soul, it's from the higher self. So it's going to be truth, authentic. So thanks, Sarah, for coming on. It's always interesting talking to you, and I love chatting to you about this stuff.
Thank you for having me on.
You're so welcome. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you've got any questions for me or Sarah, just reach out. I'll put Sarah's website in the show notes, and I'll put her Instagram links in there as well, so you can check her out. But yeah, I really hope you took something away from this episode, because it's deep work, but it's interesting, fascinating work at the same time. But it's really needed. You know, it is needed. People need to be aware of it. And yeah, it's bringing more light into the world, isn't it? And helping each other heal. As you said, when we start to heal ourselves, we in turn heal the world, don't we? So thanks again, Sarah. And yeah, look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.